The old alien facility had been silent for years. Its metal walls were covered in dust and vines. Nobody had entered for a long, long time. But today, a human stepped inside. His name was Ethan, a scavenger from Earth. He wasn't a soldier or a hero, just a man looking for scrap to sell. He had no idea his life was about to change forever. Ethan moved carefully through the broken hallway. His boots made soft sounds on the cracked floor. The lights above flickered once, then went dark again. He used a small flashlight to guide his path. The air smelled old, dry, and full of rust. He didn't expect to find anything special here. Maybe a few alien tools, maybe a working panel, anything. He could carry and sell, but then he heard something. A soft humming noise, deep and steady, like a heartbeat trapped in metal. It came from a door sealed tight with red lights around the edges. Ethan's curiosity burned inside him. He reached into his bag and pulled out a tool to override the lock. With a few clicks, the door opened. Slowly, making a loud groan, the room behind the door was dark and cold. The walls were made of glass and silver panels. In the center of the room stood something strange, a large glass box, tall and wide, shining even through the dust. Inside that glass cage was a woman, but not a human woman. She had glowing blue lines across her skin. Her hair floated gently, even without wind. Her eyes were closed, and her body looked weak for a moment. Ethan thought she was dead. He stepped closer, heart pounding. The glass looked thick, strong, and unbreakable. He tapped on it once, no answer. He tapped again, louder, still nothing. Then, her eyes opened. Bright silver eyes stared right into his soul. She didn't move, didn't speak, but her lips parted. She mouthed one word again and again. Please. Ethan froze. He had seen many strange things in the galaxy, but never this, an alien woman locked in a glass cage, alive, left behind by whoever ran this place. He leaned closer, his breath fogging the glass. Who did this to you? He whispered. She only stared, her eyes full of fear and hope at the same time. Suddenly, lights in the room flickered. A voice spoke from hidden speakers. Unauthorized access detected. Please leave immediately. It was the station's old AI system, still working somehow. Ethan looked around. The walls were humming louder now. He didn't have much time. He tried to open the glass cage. There was no door, no handle, no lock, just smooth surface and glowing edges. The woman inside placed her hand against the glass. Ethan hesitated, then placed his hand over hers. Their palms matched, only the cold glass between them. He felt something then, like a spark. She was not just trapped, she was waiting. He didn't understand how, but he knew one thing. He couldn't leave her here. She would die if he walked away. The AI voice returned, louder this time. Security protocol engaged. Venting in progress. Venting. That meant they were going to remove the air. The room was about to become a vacuum, and she couldn't survive that. Ethan pulled out his plasma cutter and aimed it at the edge of the glass. He fired, but the beam bounced off like water on stone. It didn't even scratch the surface. The glass was alive, like it could heal itself instantly. He cursed under his breath, sweat dripping down his face. The alien woman pounded the glass once, twice, her eyes wide with panic. Ethan didn't know what to do. He checked the power lines. Running under the floor, maybe if he shut off the energy flow, the cage would weaken. He followed the wires with his flashlight, found a small panel, opened it quickly, and pulled out his tools. The sound of air hissing grew louder. Time was almost gone. He cut the blue wire, first nothing. Then the red, still nothing. Then the green, the humming stopped. The lights flickered. The glass began to crack. Just a little, a thin line ran down the side of the cage. But it was working. The alien woman looked at him with new hope in her eyes, and for the first time, she smiled, just a tiny smile. "But enough," Ethan whispered. "I'm not leaving you." And as the room began to shake, he braced himself, because he was going to break that cage or die trying. The lights in the hallway blinked twice and then died completely, leaving Ethan in the dark with only the pulse of his wrist flashlight to guide him. Behind him, the glass cage cracked again, just a hairline, but it was a start. The alien woman, inside, pressed her hand against the split. Her silver eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before, hope, sharp and trembling. Ethan didn't waste time. He threw down his bag and ripped open a panel on the wall. The power system was alien. Strange circuits like veins running across metal. His hands moved quickly, not because he knew what he was doing, but because he had no choice. The AI's voice returned, louder and colder this time. "Biospecimen breach detected. Sealing Sector 9C." Doors began to close behind him. One after another, steel slamming into place like prison bars. He had maybe a minute left before the room sealed shut permanently. But the woman, she never took her eyes off him. She was still inside the cage, breathing slowly now, but her lips were moving again. Not just mouthing please this time, but a rhythm. Tap, pause. Tap, tap, long tap. It hit him she was using a code. Morse code. No, something older. Alien, but her eyes guided him again and again toward the bottom edge of the cage. Ethan followed the signal, shining his light there, and then he saw it. A tiny round slot hidden within the glass, blinking faintly red. It wasn't just a cage, it had a manual override. And she'd just shown him where. Ethan dug through his pouch for anything that could fit. Too big, too small. Then he found it. An old access key from a job weeks ago. It wasn't a perfect match, but he jammed it in anyway and twisted. The room trembled again, but this time it wasn't the AI, it was the cage reacting. The glass began to pull back slowly, layer by layer, not shattering, but unfolding like petals made of light. The temperature dropped rapidly, and mist poured out as the seal broke. She collapsed forward into his arms, her body cold, skin covered in fine frost, and glowing veins dim like a fading light. He caught her gently. She was so light, too light. She hadn't eaten in weeks, months. Her breathing was shallow but steady. For a second, neither moved. Then her fingers curled weakly around the edge of his jacket, like a child holding on to a dream. From the corner of his eye, Ethan saw red lights flashing on the far wall. Another countdown. He didn't even look at the numbers. He just pulled her close and turned toward the door. It was already halfway sealed, but he ran anyway. He dived, rolled, and slid under just as the steel slammed shut behind them. She was still in his arms, still trembling. He looked down and realized she was whispering something. A name, maybe. Over and over. But not his. He carried her through the dark hallways, deeper into the facility, searching for a safe place to hide. The station was falling apart now. The AI losing control, or maybe just giving up. Either way, alarms blared. But no security bots came. No soldiers. Only silence and the sound of broken machines. They found a room with a working door. Ethan closed it and locked it manually. Then gently laid her on the floor, wrapping her in his jacket. Her eyes opened slightly, pupils glowing. Faint blue. She spoke again, and this time he understood the sound barely. "Name," she whispered. He knelt beside her and brushed dust from her forehead. "Ethan," he said softly. "You?" She blinked slowly, as if the question confused her. Then she simply shook her head. She didn't remember. Ethan didn't know what she was or who left her behind, or why she was imprisoned in a glass cage like an animal, but he knew one thing for sure. She was alive now, and as long as he had breath, he wasn't letting her go back into that prison again. The station trembled above them, but in that abandoned room for the first time. She closed her eyes without fear, curled against the warmth of the first soul who saw her not as a danger but as someone worth saving. And outside, in the shadows, something else had awakened the moment the glass broke. Something watching, something waiting. The hum was back, louder this time. No longer a soft whisper beneath the metal, but a sharp vibration that made the walls groan and tremble. Ethan felt it through the floor as he crouched beside her, the alien woman resting quietly in his jacket. Her breath still uneven, her body recovering but not safe yet. He looked at the cracked ceiling and knew the facility wasn't stable anymore. Something was reactivating, and it wasn't just the station's aging systems it felt. Alive, like the building itself was trying to wake up. He pressed his ear to the wall, and there it was, again that rhythm, slow and deep, like a pulse, not mechanical, but biological. Like the cage hadn't been a machine at all, but some kind of living organism holding her, keeping her, feeding off her energy. He turned to her and asked softly, "What was that thing? What was the cage?" She blinked slowly, then pointed a trembling finger to the floor. Her voice barely came out, dry and weak. "Not a prison. A shell." Ethan's stomach turned. That thing had grown around her like an egg, or worse, like a parasite. It hadn't been built to protect her. It had been feeding on her. Suddenly the walls flickered with alien symbols glowing red and gold, and the lights twisted, spinning like they were being pulled by gravity in the wrong direction. Ethan grabbed her arm and helped her sit up. "You have to move," he said. "We need to get out now." Hush. She nodded slowly, her strength returning. Her hands glowed faintly against pale blue light flowing beneath her skin. Like liquid fire returning to her blood, she wasn't helpless anymore. They left the room and stepped into a hallway that now looked completely different. The metal walls were pulsing, soft like breathing lungs, and the path behind them sealed shut. Ethan cursed under his breath. They were being herded. The woman still nameless touched the wall with her hand. And the wall responded, rippling like water beneath. "Her fingers," she whispered. "It's not done with me." A door slid open ahead, not with machinery, but like muscle tearing. Long corridor stretched into darkness, and at the end, a light pulsed slowly. Red and wet looking, Ethan didn't want to go in there. Every part of his mind screamed to turn back, but the woman began walking forward, barefoot, her balance steady now. "I was grown in this place," she said quietly, "built from pieces of many species, too human. They said I was a mistake." Ethan followed close behind her, heart pounding. "Why did they lock you up?" She stopped walking and looked over her shoulder, her silver eyes glowing with sadness and rage. "Because I wasn't born to obey," she said. "They made me, then feared me." The pulsing red light ahead began to change, shifting colors, growing faster, and then the room opened, revealing the source of the heartbeat. A massive glass pod, just like the one she'd been trapped in, but this one was still full. Inside floated something monstrous, twisted, still forming a second version of her, but larger. Darker, its skin was black instead of blue, and its eyes were already open, staring at them both. Ethan reached for his weapon instinctively. But the woman raised her hand. "Don't," she whispered. "This one is different." The pod cracked slowly, steam hissing out as the shell split, and the creature inside fell to its knees, coughing. It looked at them both and then lunged. Ethan fired before he could think. Plasma shots hit the creature in the shoulder, but it didn't fall. It just screamed a scream that shook the hallway. The lights, the air itself. The woman stepped in front of Ethan. her hands glowing bright now, and shouted something in a language he didn't know. The creature paused, breathing hard, confused. She understands. The woman said quietly, "She's part of me, but twisted." Forced to hate, Ethan stared at the two alien women, one soft, one violent, both experiments left behind in a tomb of science and failure. Can she be saved? He asked. The woman didn't answer right away. Then, softly, she said, "If I leave her, she'll come after you." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we don't leave her." She turned to him slowly. Surprised by his words, no one ever said that before, she whispered. And with that, she stepped toward the creature again. Holding out her glowing hand, the hallway watched silently, breathing, waiting, judging, as one sister reached out to the other. In the distance, the AI spoke again. "One last time, containment has failed. Initiate self-destruct protocol." The countdown began. But neither Ethan nor the alien woman moved, because sometimes saving someone else starts by saving yourself first. The creature stood frozen, its dark eyes locked on the glowing hand reaching toward it. Steam still hissed from the broken pod behind it, filling the air with a strange metallic fog. For a moment, Ethan thought the twisted alien would lunge again. Claws raised, full of rage, but something flickered in its face: hesitation, confusion, recognition. The alien woman, still weak but standing tall, didn't flinch. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, "You're not my enemy." The creature blinked, then growled low in its throat. But its claws didn't strike. It stared at her hand like it didn't know what to do. Suddenly, the hallway pulsed red again, and the AI voice returned. 15 seconds to self-destruct. Ethan's eyes shot toward the nearest door, a hatch barely hanging open with sparks falling around it. He yelled, "We have to go now." The creature looked up, alarmed by the countdown, but instead of running, it grabbed the glowing woman and shoved her hard straight toward Ethan. She stumbled, falling into his arms as the floor cracked beneath them. The creature stayed behind, turning toward the shaking walls. Its eyes found hers one last time before the door slammed shut and sealed it in. Then came the explosion. Fire burst through the hallway like a wave of heat and light. Ethan turned his back and shielded her, falling to the floor as flames roared. Just inches behind them, metal groaned, ceilings collapsed, and everything around them turned to fire and ash. Then, silence. Dust floated through the air like snow. Ethan coughed, eyes burning, his ears ringing from the blast. He looked down. She was still breathing, her body curled tight, glowing dimly beneath his jacket. He sat up, chest heaving, and saw they were in a maintenance tunnel, buried under broken steel but somehow alive. He checked her pulse. It was weak but steady. She slowly opened her eyes and whispered, "She saved us." Ethan nodded, not knowing what else to say. The twisted clone had pushed them to safety and stayed behind. The one made to destroy had chosen to protect. He helped the woman sit up, and for a while they just sat in the dust, both too shaken to speak. Then she looked at him and said, "You should have left me in the cage." Ethan frowned. "Why?" "Because," she whispered, "now the galaxy will come for us both." He didn't answer right away. He looked at her, tired, hurt, hunted, but alive. "No," he said firmly. "They left you, not me." She blinked at him. Surprised. "I'm not them," Ethan said. "And I'm not leaving you." They got up slowly, crawling over twisted beams and broken walls until they found a collapsed emergency ladder. Ethan climbed first, testing the strength of each step before calling her up. The tunnel was narrow, full of dust and heat, but they kept going. Above them, daylight glimmered through a crack in the ceiling. When they finally emerged, they found themselves outside the facility, standing in the ruins of a forgotten lab. The sky above was red-orange, thick with dust storms rolling across the dead. planet. But the air was breathable, and the silence out here felt different, free. The woman looked at the sun, her skin glowing slightly in its light. Ethan offered her a drink from his canister, and she took it slowly, as if unsure it was real. She looked at him and asked, "What happens now?" "Ah." He smiled tiredly. "Now we get off this rock." She raised an eyebrow. "You have a ship." "Somewhere," he said. "Just need to walk a few miles." She shook her head slowly. Amazed, "You broke the cage," she said softly. "Why?" Ethan didn't speak for a while. Then he looked at her and answered, "Because someone had." 2. They walked together into the dust, not as prisoner and rescuer, but as two survivors. Behind them, the ground trembled one last time. And far beneath the surface, something ancient and broken finally went silent forever. But in that silence, something new had been born. Something alive, something free, and she wasn't going back in a cage ever again. The sky above them burned with dusty orange light, and the wind howled low across the dead planet's surface like a voice trying to remember something. Ethan and the alien woman walked slowly through the wreckage, their boots sinking into cracked stone and ash. Neither spoke for a long time, but the silence between them was no longer colded, felt shared, heavy with everything they'd survived. Her strength was returning, step by step, her eyes clearer now, her skin glowing faintly again with blue light. But Ethan could see it. She was hiding pain, not just in her body, but in her memories. He didn't ask yet, didn't press. He knew when people were ready to talk, they did. They reached the edge of a collapsed ridge where the land dipped into an old loading bay. Ethan stopped, scanning the horizon. "That's where my ship should be," he said, pointing about 5 miles that way. She looked at the cracked valley below, her arms folded tightly across her chest. "They won't let us leave," she said quietly. "Who?" he asked, though he already guessed. "The ones who made me," she said, her voice shaking. "The ones who locked me in that cage." Ethan sat on a large chunk of broken metal and motioned for her to sit. "To tell me," he said, not as a command, but like an invitation. She hesitated, then lowered herself beside him. "I wasn't born. I was designed," she said, looking out at the horizon. "They mixed DNA from over 20 species, trying to build a perfect envoy, a weapon that could speak, fight, adapt, and survive anywhere." Ethan listened without interrupting. "I passed every test," she continued. "But when I started asking questions, when I started dreaming, they said I was malfunctioning." Her eyes turned distant, filled with cold memories. "They said I was too human." Ethan clenched his jaw. "So they locked you in a cage?" She nodded. "They called it a stasis shell. Said I needed to be preserved until a decision was made, but no one ever came back." He added, "No." She said softly, "I think they left me to die." A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of the wind pushing dust across their boots. Then she turned and looked at him, her voice softer than before. "When you touched the glass, I thought it was a dream." Ethan looked at her, tired eyes, but still steady. "I didn't plan to find anyone down there," he said, "but when I saw you, Livy, couldn't just walk away." She smiled faintly, for the first time, not out of fear, but something like comfort. Then her face grew serious again. "They'll come for me," she said. "They'll see the lab is destroyed, and they'll come." Ethan stood up, adjusting the gear on his back. "Let them," he said. "You're not property, and you're not alone anymore." She stood beside him, taller now, stronger. "I don't even have a name," she said quietly. Ethan paused, then pointed at the glowing symbols on her arm. "What do those mean?" She looked down, then traced the smallest one. "I think it means light that endures." He smiled. "Sounds like hope to me." She looked up at him, eyes wide, and whispered, "Hope." He nodded. "Yeah, that's your name now. If you want it." She whispered it again, as if testing how. It felt in her mouth. Hope. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine broke the quiet air. Ethan spun around, grabbing his rifle. A small silver drone was hovering above them, blinking red according. Watching, Hope stepped forward. And for a moment, the blue in her skin flashed brighter. The drone shuddered in midair and exploded in a soft pop of smoke and sparks. Ethan stared at her, eyebrows raised. "You did that?" She nodded, surprised herself. "I didn't mean to. It just happened." He looked around the sky. "More will come." She didn't look afraid. "Not anymore." "Then we move," she said. And together they began walking again, one step at a time through the dust and danger, each step forward a small act of defiance. Hope was no longer a prisoner, and Ethan had found more than a salvage run. He'd found a reason to fight behind them. The wind erased their footsteps slowly, but nothing could erase what had been born in the ruin. A girl with no name, now called Hope. And the man who broke the cage, even if the galaxy came for them. They were ready. The sun dipped lower on the red horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty plain as Ethan and Hope moved toward the direction of his buried ship. Their footsteps crunched quietly on the dry earth, but above them, the sky was no longer still. Two streaks of light cut through the cloud-small ships. Fast, descending with sharp precision, Ethan spotted them first. His instincts flaring. "Scouts," he muttered, tightening the strap on his rifle. Hope turned, watching the ships glide silently across the sky like vultures circling a wounded animal. "They found us," she said quietly, her voice calm. But distant, they ran, ducking into a crevice between jagged rocks as the ships slowed overhead. Dust blew across the rocks in sharp waves as a low hum vibrated the ground from the belly of one ship. A sphere drop-tit hovered just above the ground and began scanning the area, its red light sweeping slowly like a searchlight. Ethan gripped his weapon and looked at Hope. "We can't outrun that," he whispered. Hope didn't answer. Her eyes glowing again, brighter than before, her breath steady. Then, suddenly, she stepped out from behind the rock, fully visible, her arms raised. "What are you doing?" Ethan hissed, but she didn't stop. The scanning orb locked onto her instantly. Red light flashing wildly, it shot a beam of electricity at her chest, but just before it could hit, the light from her skin surged outward, forming a barrier. The blast hit the glowing shield and dissolved like smoke in water. Then, something unexpected happened. Hope raised her hand toward the drone, and the orb trembled in midair. It whined, sparked, and then fell to the ground silent. Ethan stepped out slowly, shocked. Hope's voice was steady now, "I think I can control their tech." Ethan blinked. "Since when?" "I don't know," she said. "It started after the cage broke. I feel something inside, like it's waking up." He looked at the ship still hovering above, watching. "Can you take that one down?" She stared at it for a long moment, then shook her head. "No, not yet, but I can blind it." Her eyes closed, and her skin lit up again, pale blue, then white. A wave of pulsing energy rippled from her like a silent explosion. Above the ship's lights blinked. Its engines stuttered, and then it veered off course, disappearing back into the sky. Ethan grabbed her arm. "We have to move now." They ran across the open field, climbing over old, rusted wreckage until they reached a large metal ridge. Ethan scanned the surface, then smiled. "She's still here," he said, dropping to one knee. He brushed away sand and rock, revealing the edge of his buried ship. Within minutes, he opened a side hatch, and stale air hissed out. Inside was small but safe, a cockpit, 2 chairs, a tiny cargo bay, and supplies. Hope stepped in slowly, her eyes scanning every detail. "Is this where you live?" she asked softly. "Sometimes," Ethan said, checking the controls. "She's still running, a little slow, but she fly." Hope sat down gently, fingers brushing the worn seat fabric. Ethan handed her a sealed water pack and some food. She hesitated, then accepted it with a nod. He sat across from her, the low light flickering above them. "I don't know what's happening to me," she said quietly. Ethan leaned back. "I think you were never just a test subject." She looked at him, confused. "I think you were made to be more," he continued, "to evolve, to grow." She looked down at her hands, the soft light fading now as her body relaxed. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," Ethan replied, "but we're still here." A silence settled between them, peaceful but heavy. Then she looked up, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to run forever." "You won't," he said, without doubt. "You have me now." Above them, the stars were beginning to show, and the galaxy was moving quietly, but far beyond the clouds. Someone was already watching. The organization that built her abandoned her, erased her. They'd felt the pulse when the cage broke, and now they were coming. Hope closed her eyes, and in the darkness behind her thoughts, something else stirred. A memory not hers, a voice she never heard, a name not yet spoken. Something ancient, something powerful, and it had just awakened. The ship's engines rumbled to life beneath the sand, slow and rough, coughing up dust as they powered on for the first time in years. Inside the cockpit, Ethan watched the blinking lights carefully, hands moving across controls. Hope sat beside him, silent, her glowing eyes watching the sky. She looked calm on the outside, but inside, her thoughts spun like a storm. She didn't just feel awakened anymore. She felt connected, as if invisible threads were pulling her toward something she couldn't see, something vast and waiting beyond the stars. Ethan flicked a switch, and the main display lit up. "Pre-flight check complete," he said, half smiling. "We're ready." Hope looked at him, then at the darkening sky. "They won't let us go," she whispered. "They'll try," Ethan said, "but I don't plan to ask permission." A sudden alarm buzzed on the screen, multiple blips, closing in. 3 ships approaching fast, no ID signals. No warnings, just silent predators heading straight for them. Ethan jumped to his feet and checked the outer cam. "They're not scouts," he said grimly. "Those are hunters." Hope stood too, her hands glowing already. She stepped toward the cockpit glass and stared at the incoming shapes in the sky. "I know those ships," she said, her voice cold now. "They were the ones that brought me to the lab." Ethan looked at her, then they came to finish the job. She didn't respond. But her light grew brighter, blue shifting to white. The first ship fired. A blast of energy streaked toward them. Hope raised both hands and pushed outward. A wall of glowing light exploded from her body, forming a barrier just outside the ship. The blast hit the shield and dissolved instantly. The second and third ships opened fire too. The cockpit shook. Lights flickered, but the shield held. Ethan stared at her in awe. "You're doing that?" She didn't answer. Her face was calm, but her entire body glowed like a star trying to break through skin. "I can't hold it for long," she said, her voice straining now. Ethan turned to the controls. "Then let's punch a hole and run." Through, he armed the forward cannons and took the controls. The ship roared as it lifted off, engines screaming. Hope walked to the center of the ship and crouched down, placing both hands on the floor the moment they were airborne. Ethan fired twin blasts, struck the nearest enemy ship, spinning it off course. The others followed in a tight V formation, their weapons lighting up the sky. Ethan dove low, pulling the ship hard left. Hope focused deeper, her voice whispering something ancient now, not words, but echoes. Her energy surged through the floor, feeding the ship itself. The engines glowed brighter, faster. The ship began moving like it was alive, responding to her presence. Suddenly, one of the hunters veered too close. Hope stood and turned toward the hull. A pulse of light exploded from her body. and the enemy ship tore apart midair, as if it had flown into a wall of lightning. The final ship hesitated, then broke away, but it wasn't retreating. It sent out a signal, loud, wide, and encrypted. They called for reinforcements, Ethan muttered, checking the scanner. Hope stepped back into the cockpit, breathing heavy, her skin dimming slightly. "I can't do that again soon," she said. "You won't have to," Ethan said, his voice hard. "We're leaving orbit now." The ship climbed through the atmosphere, fire licking the edges of the view outside. Once they cleared the sky, stars opened above them, dozens, hundreds, then thousands. Hope stood quietly, staring out at the galaxy. So much space, so many unknowns. She felt both small and limitless. "You still want to run?" Ethan asked. She shook her head. "No," she said softly. "I want to find out who I really am." Ethan nodded. "Then let's find out together." In the silence that followed, Hope closed her eyes, and for the first time, she reached inward. Deeper than memory, deeper than anything she thought she was. And in that still place inside her, something answered, not in words, but in power. A map unfolded in her mind. Stars lighting up in perfect patterns, not random destinations. She opened her eyes and looked at Ethan. "There's a place," she said. "I think I was meant to go there." "Then that's where we're going," he said without hesitation. Because now it wasn't about saving her anymore. It was about unlocking whatever the galaxy tried to bury, and watching her rise from it, not as a prisoner, not as an experiment, but as something new, something free, something powerful. Her name was Hope, and she had only just begun.